Good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We will get started. Today is Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. It's 6:07 p.m. We are in the Town Council chambers here at 30 Main Street. This is Town Council meeting 15-25. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, there's an ice cube on my agenda. All right, moving forward to our second item, which is a roll call. Councillor Pillsbury.
Present.
Councillor Lawrence.
Here.
Councillor Pilch.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Benoit is present. John Egan is excused tonight for a vacation up in Acadia. So before we move on, I do want to call out a proposed addition to the agenda. We have received a application for a liquor license for Sips and Subs at 11 Mill Street in Freeport. We actually heard about this from our friends Tawny and Mary when they gave the update from FEDC. This is a very well-known and highly regarded business owner in Freeport, so I'm very comfortable with moving up this item to tonight so he can get his liquor license or the public hearing for it and get on the way. Any thoughts on that?
Can you clarify the process? Because Ken was asking, like, we have to have a meeting so that we have a meeting so we can set the public hearing to set the public hearing. Can you run that down?
So,
Thought she was running away.
She's like, I'm on this.
that's exactly what you said. So as soon as I get a new liquor license application, the next council meeting, we have to put that on to set the public hearing for 2 weeks later. With this situation, he misunderstood the term prior to council meeting, so I got it yesterday at 1 o'clock. That's why. And then with the August schedule only having one meeting, it really would have set them back a full month. That's why I requested to set aside the rules.
So 2 council meetings is what it takes, and the first one is set the public hearing. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Unless you change your policy.
That's a Freeport policy, not a state policy?
That is correct. You do not have to hold a public hearing for a new one. It's a may, not a shall. So if we can talk about changing the policy on that.
Great.
Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I move to set aside the Freeport Town Council Rules of Order and Procedure to allow the addition of action item number 96-25 to set a public hearing related to new liquor license for FOB LLC, DBA Sips and Subs, 11 Mill Street, Freeport.
Second.
And that's just to add it to the, just to add it to the
Right.
agenda.
So then we'll add this, if it passes, we'll add it to the end of the voting agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, and this is to waive reading and accept as printed the July 1st, 2025 meeting minutes.
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to our announcements. So we are accepting applications for a vacancy on the Board of Assessment Review. This board hears appeals of the town tax assessor. This is a good fit for a retired professional who has served in construction, development, or banking positions. We also have one vacancy on the Shellfish Conservation Commission. Please contact the clerk's office for more information. The council will be holding a parking workshop on Tuesday, July 29th at 6 p.m. at Freeport Community Services to discuss paid parking regulations and other related issues. The Freeport Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, August 6th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the Freeport Town Hall Council Chambers at 30 Main Street, Freeport, Maine, to discuss the draft 2025 Freeport Comprehensive Plan. Copies of the plan are available to view at www.futurefreeport.com, at the town office, and at the Freeport Community Library. The public is welcome to attend and may choose to attend in person or on Zoom. This is the same thing. Different bullet threw me off. So the public can come or can come on in person or on Zoom. The meeting agenda, including information on how to join on Zoom, can be viewed at the Freeport Town office or on the town's website. Wow, this time of year already. Nomination papers will be available July 28th for elected positions to be voted on November 4th, 2025. Openings include a counselor at large, Counselor District 1, RSU 5 Board of Directors, Sewer District, and Water District. Visit the town clerk's office for further information. Any other announcements from the council? Okay. Moving on to information exchange. This is just time in the agenda for counselors to share any of their committee updates or any other constituent conversations over the last couple of weeks. We will have someone from one of our committees speaking today, giving an update on the Greater Portland Metro. But before we get to that, are there any pieces of information to share from council?
Just to let folks know, I did receive a call from a constituent yesterday weighing in on the town office hours conversation that we had at the last meeting. That was only one comment so far, but I think we may expect some more. This person was, I think, echoing Councilor Pilch's caution about the perception of reducing services. But as this person said, to be fair, he's still not thrilled that we're not open on Fridays. So has had this concern for a long time. And one of the questions was about why staff can't do multiple things from other offices, and I mentioned this to Sophie, and I just wanted her to be able to respond about what level of cross-training the staff have, and also what they're not permitted to do.
So first and foremost, when you have new staff, you're not going to really focus on cross-training. You're going to focus more on their essential job duties as we bring them up to speed. And we have significant new counter staff in every department except for the clerk's office right now. So that just for that situation, I think you need to be kind of cautious about that. So when I arrived in Freeport, I came from a community with clerks who also doubled as finance clerks. And so town clerks that doubled as finance clerks. And there are efficiencies to be gained, but as I have spent more time here, I will say that our clerk's office is a lot busier here with non-finance items. Each of the tasks that our clerks and our finance, because I think that's primarily where he's kind of at, our finance clerks and our town clerks are governed by the state of Maine. Often the actions that they are undertaking are certified and they're actually acting as agents of the state as opposed to town officials. So when you look at registering vehicles, I came up 25 years ago where I register vehicles all the time. I can't anymore, even though I physically probably could muddle my way through. You have to sit through trainings, which are multiple hours long. The other thing I will say, as somebody who's done that work before, is stepping into it and then not doing it for a week or two and then coming back. You make a lot of mistakes. And unfortunately, with motor vehicle registrations, those mistakes are not things that we feel. They are things our community feels. So I've talked with Jessica and Chris about doing cross-training. They are, in some areas, cross-trained. Elections is tough because you have to have access to the software. And again, you make a mistake and it can really cost issues. The marriage licenses, we could not cross-train on that. That just is, I think, too complicated for two different, for people to step in. So most of the time, everybody does what they're supposed to do. And so you're really cross-training for those low-frequency, hopefully low-risk items, which they do. So if the clerk's office, like today, Chris was at training and Carrie had some things she had to do outside of the office. If people showed up and needed to start business licenses or things like that, our finance clerks can go across the way and grab the licensing for them. But it's not as simple as both of those departments are doing clerical work, and therefore they can just move in and out of the effort. So everything is a work in progress. But I think the things that most people are coming to town hall for, receipting tax payments, we have shared that load before when there were long lines. Heck, I've gone out and done that. So I think it's something that is not just an easy button. I think we keep working towards that, mostly for long-term outages as opposed to just brief outages.
I think, like a lot of things, this person was also reminiscing about when the staff was smaller and things were simpler. And I think, as you've just detailed, part of the reason we need the staff that we need, and we need them specialized, is how complicated much of their tasks are.
Anything else on information sharing?
I just want to do a brief update from municipal facilities, which met the other day, yesterday. We had a great review of the proposals that were submitted for the public safety building engineering study, and great input and quite a lot of consensus, but from committee members as well as the heads of public works, police, and fire. So we've asked Sophie to go forward with trying to work out the scope of work for that, and we are hopeful that with a brief committee review by email before the end of the month, that we could bring that forward at the August meeting.
All right. Well, if nothing else from the council, I will welcome Bill Rickson up to the podium. He is our representative on the Greater Portland Transit District. He's going to give us an update on the metro and what's going on with Freeport.
Yeah. Yes, Joanna said, I'm Bill Rickson, and I've been the representative from Freeport to GP Metro, the Regional Transportation District, for a number of years. And I live about a mile south of town on Varney Road, and I have the great good fortune of being a half mile from two different bus stops. So I use the bus regularly to go to Portland or up to Brunswick. And I can bring my bicycle, so I have my bike to get around in Portland or up in Brunswick. So it's a wonderful service. The GP Metro has an executive board, and I go to most of their meetings. I'm not a voting member, but I do go just to see what's happening. There are 3 other committees. There's a finance committee, there is a ridership committee, and also a new marketing and communications committee. And over the years, I've been in all 3, and currently I'm on the marketing and communication committee. The service runs 17 times a day. A lot of people aren't aware of that. So yeah, 17 times a day from about 6 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, you can get to Brunswick or to Portland. And on Saturday, there's reduced service. It's about, I think, five going south and 6 coming north. And on Sunday, there's no Sunday service, but that's in the works. They've been looking at Sunday service for quite a while. And recently, service to Bath, to the Bath Iron Works, has just begun an early morning run up there and then a mid-afternoon run back. Sort of, I guess it's it's been talked about for quite a while because they want to service the ironworks and get people to use public transportation instead of everyone driving there, of all the people that work there. And hopefully service to Bath is going to become more frequent instead of just twice a day. So those are some of the things that are happening. So perhaps you have some questions. I think that's pretty much what I have to say at the moment.
So we asked Bill to come give updates quarterly as a pretty concerted effort to shore up, making sure we're closing these loops. Bill has a lot of knowledge and expertise on active transportation in general, and also with his role on this board. And as we think through more ways to encourage that kind of getting around in town, I think it's great to have him come every once in a while for updates. Councillor Brown.
As I've gotten back on my bicycle, I had the brainstorm thought that I could actually ride the bus to Portland and bike back. Well, I'm just curious, what kind of messaging is going on to sort of help those light bulbs go off in people's minds?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm on this newly formed marketing and communications committee, and that's the role of that committee is to let people in the community know what the service is and how to reach people, and that's primarily within the port. I mean, they're looking primarily in the Portland area, but as far as Freeport is concerned, I'm amazed here around town over the years when I mention that there's public transportation in town, most people have no idea that the Breeze exists. And it's almost 10 years now that it's functioning. And most people aren't aware of it. And I don't know how you do that, how you get people to know about it, first of all, and then even consider the thought of using it. So it's a good question.
I mean, I understand that you had an appointment in Westbrook
Yes, today. This afternoon.
And so the combination of bicycle plus bus becomes real transportation, at least a lot of the time of year.
Yeah, to get to Westbrook, it's very easy. You take the bus into Monument Square, and right there on Elm Street, the 4 or the Husky line goes out through out to Westbrook, and that runs like about every 20 minutes from Elm Street. So it's pretty easy to catch connections. You're not sitting around waiting a long time. So it's a good way to get to Westbrook, and you can or you can go to Gorham from here readily.
Well, we know you're a leader, and this is a good place to lead, so thanks.
Great, thank you.
What's the status of the trial they were doing with electric buses? Has that gone forward?
Yeah, it's about 2 years ago that they have the first electric bus. I think it was 2 years ago. And that's what they're looking at, trying to electrify the entire fleet. But it's a slow process of getting that to happen. But they're definitely thinking about it.
Thanks.
Have there been any conversations about microtransit? I know we heard about that from a representative about a year ago.
Yeah, that's they've just within the last 6 months they've implemented it in Falmouth. That's where they're the first micro. I don't understand it entirely how it works, but yeah, it's happening in Falmouth at the moment, and if it's successful there, I would hope that, they'd be able to expand that to other communities within Metro. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Bill.
Great, thank you.
All right, we will move on to the town manager's report.
So while it has been a very busy week, most everything that it has been busy with is on the agenda for tonight. I will say that we are trying to cycle staff through for vacation time. So we have several department heads who have not taken time and are coming up on some anniversary dates where that time has to be taken. So the mean town manager is not just allowing them to carry it over anymore. So you will kind of see some people disappearing for time. They will be back. We also, we did have some issues come up. Concerns were raised about the cornhole and the tables at the Memorial Park. Earl and his crew went out and put the very heavy tables out. Some of the users, we've got a few regular users, expressed some concern about where things were placed. So Earl's meeting with folks on the 21st. So he's invited our 4 heaviest users to come, walk around. If they can't arrive on that date at that time, he's offered them an opportunity to meet before that so he could carry kind of their thoughts and concerns. So the goal is to take all of that information along with maintenance information and regulatory information, especially around the Americans with Disability Act requirements to ensure that the park ultimately has the setup that works for as well as it can for everybody. So you might hear about that. You probably did hear that we had a very long Coastal Waters Commission meeting on Thursday night. Just want to make the town council aware that Charlie does just an outstanding job with Coastal Waters and the Shellfish Commission and all the other things that Charlie has to deal with. Chasing moorings lately is a good one, or boats. But this application for the launch of the Island Rover is really complicated. So we've brought Caroline in to help with reviewing the record and creating the findings of fact. When we went through that process, there are some kind of holes in the application that need to go back and just be filled in. So she's working with the applicant on that. We also have abutters that are super engaged, which is great. That's what the process is for. The commission did, the reason I'm bringing this up now is just because the commission did indicate that they were closing the general public comment period on this application, which signals we're getting down towards actual decision-making. Don't know if it will take 1 meeting or 2, maybe 3, depending on how things kind of pan out. But that is something that my office is now working with, and we've brought Amy, our town attorney, in to sit with Coastal Waters at any of the meetings that application is pending. I do think that we need to have a larger conversation, maybe with Project Review Board leadership, but Coastal Waters leadership, about how can we streamline these really complex? Are there some changes we need to make to ordinance? Is there an internal process that we can use to provide some additional support for these really complex applications? So almost the light is there at the end of the tunnel. I do not think it's a train. I think we're really getting there towards the end. So that we're just kind of puttering along. Ordinance committee next week is going to be very full. Chip doesn't even know it, that I've added another ordinance that we need to look at around harbor parking. Chris and Nate identified, we had a resident who quickly picked up on the fact that we have one sign out there that says no overnight parking and another sign that says overnight parking with permit only. So we went back to the ordinance, and the ordinance is actually kind of written like that. And the top part of the ordinance says you can only park overnight, you can only park at the harbor if you're a resident, or you own property in Freeport. But the overnight parking, evidently, it's silent. And so we've had a couple people from out of town that are arguing that it's silent because they can do it, and I don't think that that's the intent. So we want to talk about that a little bit, along with some changes to the personnel code, and tree ordinances from the tree task force are making their way up to ordinance committee for at least an initial review. So it's going to be a really busy ordinance committee. That material should be coming out to you by Thursday morning so that you have time to review it. Oh, yeah, so at our last meeting, we talked extensively about silver bullets and decided to pause removing the silver bullets for a period of time. Caroline was working with our communications team on beginning to do some messaging. We're also looking at putting out regular messaging, positive recycling information, what can be recycled, what we need them to do with the silver bullets, if they're going to be here, let's kind of try to get some education out there. We also have FSAB leadership meeting with Earl, and I think I've honed in on that conversation on the 17th. Rod Regier actually has indicated he might be interested in joining us for that meeting, which I think would be really good, to talk about recycling. So I think the committee leadership is most definitely heard the council's desire for more information and is working on it, which is great to see.
Any questions for Sophie? All right. Thank you, Sophie. So moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is the public comment period for those who are here in person. This is limited to comments on items not on the agenda. We just ask that you keep your remarks to 3 minutes. If you're interested in speaking, you can walk up to the podium and introduce yourself. All right.
That was a big one.
Moving on to the new business portion of our agenda. Item 87-25, this is to consider action relative to adopting the July 15th, 2025 consent agenda. We have some donations to the library, the resignation of a member from the Board of Assessment Review, and an appointment of Guy Blanchard to the Board of Appeals. Councillor Pillsbury, could you please read the be it ordered?
Sure. Be it ordered that the July 15th, 2025 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
I just want to point out that maybe when this goes into the minutes, the table needs to be expanded so that the name is fully there, because I think it's cutting off one of the names of the donors.
Other than that, any other thoughts? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, next up, we have a public hearing to consider action regarding text amendments to Chapter 21, Freeport zoning ordinance, campgrounds. I have Town Planner Kyle Drexler to introduce.
Hi, everyone. So we talked about this at the June 24th meeting when we set the public hearing. So this is a small amendment to our Section 505 campgrounds in the zoning ordinance. The basis for this, of why I went to the planning board originally, was that the project review board had gotten some applications for site plan amendments from some of our existing campgrounds, and there was some confusion or differing of interpretations of how to read the ordinance language around determining density for campgrounds, of whether it should be looked at as a net calculation where you take the total parcel of the campground land and just, divide it by a square footage number to get your total number of allowable campsites. Or if applicants actually need to go in and draw in kind of like camp lot lines on a site, each with their own, minimum land area. So with that kind of confusion in place, we had reached out to the town attorney who said it was, better to just like very obviously clarify this in the ordinance. We took it to the planning board. The planning board agreed that a net calculation made more sense. So that's the way we framed the ordinance amendment in 505A1, so that when these come forward, you'll simply take the total land of a campground area and divide it now by either 1,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet, depending on if you're in or out of the shoreline zone area. This should open up flexibility for campground owners in the way that they lay out their lot, potentially clustering things a little closer together, not having to spread out sites and access roads quite as far if they don't want to. Through this process, the planning board also lowered the amount of land needed for each site involved to better align with what the state licensing requirements are. So previously, we had required 5,000 square feet of land for every campsite just across the board, whether you're in or out of shoreline zoning, whereas the state was 1,000 square feet if you weren't within the shoreline zone. So the amendment aims to match that as well. And then we just clarified a little bit in 505C, the screening standard to better reflect our existing, or better cross-reference our existing buffering language in Section 506 of the ordinance. Other than that, happy to answer any questions.
Great, and before we bring it up to the dais, we'll open the public hearing. So if anyone would like to speak, feel free to go up to the podium and introduce yourself. I don't think we have anyone online. Nope. All right, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Any questions from the council? Okay. Councillor Lawrence, can you please read the be it ordained?
Sure. Nice job, Kyle, by the way. Be it ordained that text amendments to Chapter 21 Freeport zoning ordinance campgrounds related to the maximum number of allowed recreational vehicle, tent, or shelter sites and screening standards be adopted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Kyle. All right, so the next item, 89-25, is to consider action relative to setting a public hearing relative to the purchase of a new ambulance. I have Fire Chief Robert Bernard on introduction for that one.
Evening. Sophie has the contract with the information on the ambulance. It's the one that we presented this fall. The ambulance is a loaner, not a loaner, demo vehicle, much like the ladder truck was that we purchased. The truck will be done in September of '26. So we're just a little over a year out before we would have that vehicle. If we spec'd and ordered a new vehicle, we would be anywhere from 2 to 3 years to get the ambulance, much like the fire truck market. They are very slow to manufacture the apparatus. It will be a little smaller than the current ambulances we have now. We have two truck-style chassis, 4x4 chassis trucks. This ambulance will be gas. It will not be four-wheel drive, but it does have on-spot chains, which is a mechanism we can push a button in the cab, and it drops these cams onto the rear wheels, and it basically will put chain links in front of the tires or behind the tires, depending on how we're going. If we get into an area that's icy or whatnot, that we need the extra traction. And with that being said, we're spending considerably less money for this vehicle, A, not being diesel, and B, not four-wheel drive, so. Thank you.
So I just want to recognize or remind folks, I bet everybody here already knows, that we had a significant conversation about this during the capital budget process. And one of the questions that was asked is, we're right in the midst of having an evaluation of the fire department. We think we know what the number of pieces of equipment we need, but we're not sure. That's why we're asking for the evaluation to be done. And longer term, we might not want 3. We might only want 2 ambulances, if I'm capturing the gist of the conversation. And at that time, the place that I think the council was kind of headed in is, if we order this now, given the way ambulances are currently being ordered and backlogged, that we really feel like if we decide that we don't need a 3rd ambulance, it's going to be easier to kind of look at our fleet and decide what's the best use of ambulances at that point in time. That making this choice at this point in time is not setting the town up to make a decision later, but rather allows you flexibility. So if we decide that we really do need all 3 vehicles, ambulances and a smaller ambulance and 2 standard, bigger, I don't know what the terminology is, are the way to go, we would be in the position of being able to do that. If we decide not, this is a piece of equipment that we would be able to cycle through and likely turn around at the same, without much loss of town dollars, I guess was the point. My hope is that we're going to have the evaluation done before we would take possession of the vehicle anyway. Is that, I think I'm remembering correctly? Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Any questions for Chief? All right, Councillor Pilch, could you please read the be it ordered? Thank you, Chief.
Just finding the right one.
8, 9,
Be it
2.
ordered that the public hearing be set for August 5th, 2025, in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, starting at 6 p.m. to allow the public to provide comment regarding the purchase of a new ambulance in the amount of $316,000 from Greenwood Emergency Vehicles, LLC.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, moving on to item 90-25. This is action relative to setting a public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the Freeport zoning ordinance to increase building height in certain areas along Depot Street. Kyle Drexler is up again.
Again. So on the July 2nd Planning Board meeting, we took a proposed amendment to the board to raise the building height in the VC1 district, specifically along Depot Street, from the existing 45 feet to 55 feet. So this is something that I think the council identified on the work plan that was sent to the planning board as being something for the board to focus on. This idea specifically was mentioned in the downtown vision plan due to Depot Street's relative lower elevation than Main Street being suitable for slightly taller buildings than other parts of the district. That idea received some positive feedback through that process. And it's a way to, increase mixed use and multifamily development opportunities along Depot Street by allowing for some additional density by going up that, potential extra floor of development. Coupled with the fact that Depot Street currently has a number of surface level parking lots, which would make for, obviously good infill development opportunities. The planning board agreed that and felt like this was a good idea, and they ended up recommending the proposed amendment forward to go through the council adoption process 7-0. The one thing that we, in the language that you'll see, that doesn't just say, if the building's on Depot Street, there's the kind of extra provision that says, there can't be a lot line on Main Street. That's specifically to tackle any lots that have frontage or share a lot line both on Main Street and Depot Street, to avoid a situation where someone, like this lot, for instance, which touches on both streets, someone developing the 55-foot building on the Main Street side of things, which sort of defeats the whole original idea as it was brought up. So that's the purpose for that. The other piece to mention with all of this, not necessarily related to this amendment, but just related to this conversation as a whole, which came up at the planning board meeting, and I think Sophie touched on it at the last council meeting, was LD 1829, which came from the state and which was passed recently as a follow-up to the LD 2003 housing legislation. Part of that law is that municipalities need to allow affordable housing developments, so that's specific, capital A affordable housing developments. That's a unique land use in our ordinance. Municipalities will need to allow those types of projects to exceed any height limit a municipality has by 14 feet or 1 story. So that law is not in effect yet. We have a year to implement that. So, the planning board, we discussed this. Is there any concern there? Where we landed and where the conversation really went is that that's not in effect now. So it doesn't necessarily present any problem to have this this amendment go through now. And then at the time that we do revisit those LD 1829 changes and we look to implement those changes into the ordinance, we can revisit then. If we had to pull back on building height in certain areas because people weren't comfortable with the idea of a potentially 70-ish foot building, then we could do that then. But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to worry about that now, because that law could end up changing through rulemaking. That deadline could get pushed out further than a year. Like, any number of things could happen between then. So the planning board did consider that, but they felt like the amendment as is for the time being was fine to go through. Happy to answer any questions, but that pretty much sums it up.
Any questions for Kyle? I just want to recognize that this has been discussed here multiple times, so I'm excited to see this moving forward. Thank you. All right, Councilor Brown, please read the be it ordered.
Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for August 5th, 2025 in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, starting at 6 p.m. to allow the public to provide comment regarding proposed amendments to Town of Freeport Ordinances, Chapter 21, Zoning Ordinance, Section 413, Village Commercial VC1, regarding an increase to the building height allowed for certain areas along Depot Street.
Second.
All right, any other questions?
I actually do have a question
Sure.
for Kyle. I know that you, as well as Brett, have had some conversation with developers and trying to get the zoning right and the height restriction. Are you confident that that height is the right height that is going to encourage the sort of development that we're looking for in that area?
Yes. Yeah, we've had conversations with people, haven't heard anything, that potentially would lead us to believe that a project would come in at, 59 feet, and then, we have to come back here, a few weeks from now or months from now or whenever it is. So, yep, we're comfortable that the 55 feet allows potentially for projects to take advantage of the fifth story, but, we wouldn't need to necessarily go higher than that.
Thanks.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, item 91-25. This is the continuation of our conversation that we started our last meeting around considering a formal moratorium that prohibits charging the general public for parking. This conversation, we started this last meeting. We know, I think many of us know, this is a quickly evolving discussion, and we've seen a lot of reaction about this issue. So we're not making the decision tonight, but I think the moratorium would be sort of the pause button to take stock of the status of parking regulations in town while we're saying it's about paid parking. I know our conversations have really touched on, once we pull this thread, I think we'll see a lot of other pieces around how we handle parking downtown in general come with it. And I'm, especially interested in sort of thinking through how we can address some of those challenges and inequities we see in how we manage parking in Freeport. But with that said, this item is specifically to send the drafted ordinance to the planning board per ordinance or per statute for them to discuss and give an opinion on. So for the course of tonight, I think there are some folks here who I believe will want to speak on this item. We'll certainly allow some comment. We'll do public comment rules, or just keep it to 3 minutes and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there once we get to that point. So.
And I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation and actually take a different seat, and I'll be back.
Great. Great.
Do you want to, just in terms of process, just so everybody's on the same page, what we're saying tonight is we're asking the planning board to set a public hearing, and then presumably at a second meeting, they would be voting on whether or not they approve the ordinance to recommend that the council pass it. Then we would have a public hearing, and then we would vote on the ordinance. Is that the right process?
So let me, based on the input that I have received from council, Caroline, just as the parking expert, put it out there, this has to go to the planning board because the moratorium is affecting land use ordinances. So it's actually seen as a temporary amendment to Chapter 21. So so let's just assume everything falls in and nothing kicks this out anywhere. The proposed timeline would be that you refer it on to the planning board now. The planning board would hold a public hearing. Unlike the town council, the planning board doesn't hold a meeting to set a public hearing, just their rules are a little bit different. So there's been conversation with the planning board chair and the planner about scheduling the public hearing on this if the council votes tonight in the affirmative, the same night as the public hearing on the comprehensive plan. So essentially, the planning board meeting would be 2 items, the comp plan public hearing and this public hearing. When the planning board hears an item like this for council, they are charged with holding a public hearing and also making recommendations, especially as to whether or not it is consistent with the comprehensive plan that is currently in effect. So right now, the timeline for that meeting is likely going to be August 6th, which is a regular planning board meeting. On August 5th, if everything is chugging, so we're having the parking workshop on the 29th. When we come back together on the 5th, the item for the council to consider at that point is whether or not to schedule a public hearing on the moratorium. At that point, you would be scheduling it for September 2nd unless you want to have a special meeting, which I don't think anybody is really looking forward to doing unless you really need to. So that would be September 2nd. And at that meeting, you would take public comment. My understanding is with a moratoria, you have to wait 14 days to be able to adopt it. So it would not be adoption and public hearing and adoption on the same night. The moratorium as presented to you, based on kind of thoughts and feelings I've gathered, includes retroactivity back to the first night that you discussed paid parking and the moratorium, which would be June 24th.
So no matter when we pass it, it will be retroactive to June 24th
Yep.
as it's written now.
Yep. That means anything that comes in at this point, we would be seeking legal guidance how to deal with it if we saw any applications. This interim period is kind of a gray area, so.
So if I have it right, some opportunity for public comment tonight, some opportunity for public comment on August 6th, the planning board.
Yep.
Sorry, I skipped the July 29th
Ninth.
public
Yep.
parking workshop, which is a
Yep.
whole night just dedicated to talking about parking, council
Yep.
meeting, council workshop. So July 29th, August 6th, and then September 2nd, at our meeting, we'd have a public hearing, again, to talk about the moratorium, and then we can adopt it 14 days after that.
Yep.
Retroactive to June 24th.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for outlining that so precisely, Dan. That's very helpful. Any other discussion up here? All right. I guess we'll put it out to the public before I put it on the table. Yeah. So if anyone would like to speak on this item, please feel free to walk up to the podium, introduce yourself, and again, keep it at 3 minutes. I was wrong. Wow. Okay. So I will read the be it ordered. Be it ordered that the Town of Freeport paid parking facility moratorium ordinance be forwarded to the planning board to hold a public hearing and to formulate a recommendation to the town council with a request that this action take place on or before August 18th, 2025.
Second.
Any other discussion? Questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right. Moving on to item 92-25, this is to consider action relative to a purchase and sale agreement and related deed to sell town land owned at Bartol Island Road. Sophie, take it away.
So this is something that I've actually been working with the property owner right up until this afternoon on. But I want to just frame it for you, and then you can decide whether or not you need to see more and want more information. About a month and a half ago, Caroline and I were approached by Ford Reiki representing Bartol Island LLC, Gladys Coffrin and Daniel Logan, who all own property out on Bartol Island, with a request to look at the significant erosion on town-owned property that they are concerned will ultimately, if not addressed now, cause a problem to the only road access to the island. So they came back with a proposal. That proposal was to buy it for the cost that we have it currently assessed at, which initially they had inaccurate data from our website, not their fault, our fault, that had that purchase price at $31,800, that assessed value at $31,800. And what we saw is over time, just because it's a municipal property and doesn't get looked at and is exempted from a lot of the data checks that we have, it was up to a little over $122,000. And so the proposal was what we have it assessed at, plus they would go do the erosion do an erosion project to stabilize the bank. So they went and got a proposal from Flycatcher for at an estimate of over $100,000 to do that work.
I just want to mention that I believe, Sophie, you sent that to council via email
Oh, yeah.
not very long ago, so you might
Yeah.
have it in your inbox if you want to take a look at it.
And I worked with Min a little bit Min and Nick to understand whether the lot was buildable, what the true value of the lot was going to be, and spent some time with Ford as the representative talking about the fact that if we deeded the parcel with the inability to build anything on it and to maintain current level of public access, that the value would actually be, Min did the calculation again, the value is actually $28,800. And so the purchase at this point proposal is to buy it for $28,800 before, once we sell the purchase, once we sign a purchase and sale agreement and they give us some earnest money, they would do the erosion mitigation stabilization project. And then, once that is done to Nick's satisfaction from a code standpoint, we would complete the transaction with the remainder of the purchase price of $18,800 and pass the deed. The deed has covenants within the deed that require it to be forever wild, so no structures being built on it, and also to remain the same level of public access. The description says, including use by hikers, dog walkers, vehicle drop-off for licensed shellfish and worm harvesters, together with seasonal storage in the water adjacent to the property of up to 10 canoes or kayaks. So what we've said is exactly what happens there today would be able to continue. What they don't want to have happen is fast forward 20 years and have some commercial, like somebody wants to put canoe rental business out there or something like that. They wouldn't want that to be able to happen, but this passive recreation is what they are interested in. So we went back and forth with the type of deed. This is a quitclaim deed, so we took this for taxes 30-something years ago. So we are well past, we've owned it, we've used it, and now we're disposing of it. But we can't do that with a warranty deed. So, and the reason that we're looking at the purchase and sale is to outline, to give them the opportunity to do the erosion project to our satisfaction. So that's what I have. And so there's new stuff there if you want to. I will tell you the one thing that Ford has been very clear with me about is he wants all of this to be very transparent. He wants council to feel very good about this process. And if you need a little bit more time because it's taken us some time, I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Steve, go ahead.
Just curious, how close to the water is it? Is this property? Is it on the water? Yeah.
The erosion is about, I think it's active erosion. Oh, I'm sorry. I should know that.
You should know that.
Sorry.
There are photos and a map in the report that you have from Tim Forrester at Flycatcher, who is the person who we always see presenting these applications to the town. I think it's about 225 feet of active erosion, and it's advancing noticeably. The water is closer than from me to you, Steve, from the road, or parallel to it.
I think the notable feature about this is the public access, that in a sense nothing's changed, so this seems like such a win-win that, thank you.
Thank you. We'd rather not have the problem. And it's actually the price that's in the Flycatcher proposal is an estimate, a firm price, and it's closer to 150 than 100,000.
I just want to mention, this did come through municipal facilities, as is often the case with tax-acquired property. And there was discussion, not about the detailed price, but essentially that the price should reflect whether or not it's considered a buildable lot. And so if it is being sold at a non-buildable lot price, that was the feeling of the committee, was that should be reflected in the deed. And that if it was not going to be in the deed, then that would impact the price. So I think Sophie's done a nice job in continuing the negotiation as the committee had directed. And I agree. I would echo that comment to you, Ford, that the proactivity actually is welcome, because all over the coast of Freeport, we have people who require shoreline stabilization for their own property, but it's particularly the vulnerable roads that I think it's often hard to get the multiple stakeholders together to do this work. And so the fact that you're doing it before your houses are cut off is really welcome for everyone.
Did the Municipal Facilities Committee talk about is the lot buildable if there wasn't a covenant attached to the deed? Is it otherwise buildable?
Well, that was going to be for Nick to decide, and I don't know if that was actually determined.
So you know our code officer, and he doesn't want to say for certain that nothing is buildable, but looking at it, he says it would be really difficult to meet the setbacks and to do the things there that need to be done.
Pretty small lot.
It's a fairly small lot. It's kind of oddly shaped, and you've got the road that you have to set back from and some other things there.
And what, regarding the road, is that's a private road or a town road?
It's a private road.
Private road, once it passes the, is it Tide Brook? Once it passes that little parking out. So it's a public lot that's only accessible by a private road?
Yes.
Okay. If we didn't sell it, would we have to do the remediation, the erosion remediation?
So, I mean, I would argue that it could just sit there, and they would probably argue that we have some requirement to do something. Ultimately, would we want to be the town that cut residents off from an island? And, I don't know. I think there's a reason that towns usually don't own property on private roads, because it gets really complicated.
Do we have an easement? There's public access at the property. Does that public access include the right-of-way to use the road to get to the public property?
With respect to it being a buildable lot, it's 2-acre zoning in that part of town, and this is only 1 acre, and it is surveyed. And the deed, this transaction would make it forever wild by virtue of the deed. There is not an existing easement for the public to get down there, but it's been honored because it's the access point for several clammers and wormers. This transaction would establish that easement as well.
You would include on the road, the right-of-way on the, or the easement on the road?
Yep.
Okay. And would the access include, I know you mentioned clammers, would it also include personal watercraft? If somebody wants to launch a kayak there, could they do that?
Whatever the town rules are for that, yep.
Okay. Talking about kayaks. Okay. And for municipal facilities, did you look at other uses for the property? If we didn't sell it, it could be this, it could be that, or? Yeah.
No, knowing that it has sat there for 30 years without other municipal use, I think it was really the understanding, because we've seen this issue in other parts of town where private roads need stabilization, and folks have not been as proactive, and that becomes a problem not only for them but also for the town. And I think the understanding that it makes sense if the road owners are going to do the work, which is not technically to the road but to the shoreline, that they should have the right title and interest to do that, and to keep it going? Because I hope this shoreline stabilization lasts for a long time, but that's not to say that it'll be the only time that that has to happen.
Why is it structured where there's the earnest money, then the work, then the completion, and not just sell the lot and then do the project?
The issue of making sure that this, I think because the purpose of the sale is to make sure that that happens, it's to say, yes, we're going to sell this to you so that you can do the work, and therefore we want to make sure that you're doing the work as part of the transaction.
So,
Did I summarize that?
yes, very well. So it's the way I was trained if you're passing a deed with an expectation. And also, to be perfectly honest, because Ford wanted to make sure that it was very clear he wasn't getting a special deal here, I thought it was important to structure it in a way that I would structure it for other people that we don't necessarily know.
And there's no urgency if it happens tonight, or do we have a meeting, we have one more meeting in August, or? No, we don't, so it would be September. Is the project going to happen this summer, or would it be next summer? We don't know, depends. Okay.
Knowing the backup contractors and permitting would be.
Yeah, my gut reaction is to have a little bit more time to study it, and also just to give, if there are any other public questions about it, because this is the first time we've really talked about it in public. But I also don't want to stand in the way of what sounds like a good project, so.
Sounds good.
I'll defer to you guys.
So to make that happen and make it clean for Chris, if that's kind of the will of the whole council, would be to just vote to table it, and then we'll hold it, and on the 2nd, we'll pull it off the table.
September 2nd. Motion?
Consent. I'll make a motion to table item 9225 until our August 2nd meeting.
September.
September 2nd, oh, sorry, September 2nd meeting.
Oh, wait, no, August 6th.
We could do August 6th.
That's what,
If that's your,
Yeah, August 6th.
all right, I'll amend my motion to table the item until our August 6th meeting.
5th? Is it
Yes.
the 5th or the 6th?
Tuesday.
Planning board is the 6th.
Right.
Council's the 5th.
Jeezums,
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
Tuesday, August 5th.
So I have a motion from Dan, but who's second?
second.
Is there any discussion on that? I agree. I think we just got the materials during the meeting. I'd like to take some more time to review them and answer some questions, or have time for questions even. So I support that. So all those in favor? Aye. All right, item 93-25, this is to consider action relative to accepting the Community Resilience Partnership Community Action Grant. We are voting to accept the award of $10,000. I know we applied for more than that, so I'll let Caroline kind of walk us through what the grant is now.
Sure. So this was an application we had made to the Community Resilience Partnership. We had applied for a couple different components. The first component of the project was an in-kind match, but it was the commitment that we're going to work together with our public safety team and the town manager's office to bring home the final version of the emergency management plan. The second part of the grant application was that we had applied for a generator so that we could operate a portion or the entire building at the Freeport Community Library as a warming and cooling center, which is something that we don't have today. It would have also allowed us to keep that building open in times of power outages, because there are times where they seem to lose power when we still have it at Town Hall. We were notified from GoPIF that the generator, because it wasn't solar, is not an allowable use, so they encouraged us to apply for a future round of funding for that. But it would be more for battery backup power, so I'm going to work with Winter, and we're going to pursue some options. The third component of the grant was public notification and outreach to build upon some community efforts to help us become more resilient. So we thought a great first step there was to educate people on the programs we have. So we will work with Pete, our communications director, to design some postcard mailers to mail to every household in Freeport to teach them about the Code Red program. Of course, we'll work with public safety on this. the Good Morning Reassurance Program, and then we did go back and alter the grant application, which is why it took a little bit longer, for a third mailer, and it will be something to be determined in support of the implementation of our climate action plan.
Any questions? All right. I forget where I am. Oh, back to you, Councillor Pillsbury. Did I skip you?
Yes.
Go ahead. We'll do Eric next.
Be it ordered that the town accept the award of $10,000 issued by the State of Maine Governor's Office of Policy Innovation and the Future for the Community Resilience Partnership Community Action Grant and authorize the town manager to sign on their behalf.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to item 94-25. This is to consider action relative to reviewing whether and when to pilot a temporary traffic calming and pedestrian safety project at the intersection of Bow and Main Streets. This is coming out of the PPI that we have with MDOT and Stantec. And I have Brett, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Brett. Do this. Brett Dixon, Development Director of the town, and I got a couple images to show everybody tonight, so I wanted to slide deck. Get it up. Here we go. So, as Councilor Brewing mentioned, this is part of the Village Corridor Initiative. Downtown Vision, Chicago Initiative, all right, so Main and Bow, it's the heart of downtown. That's where everything comes together. It's a storied intersection in Freeport, and it's a key intersection for the PPI as well as our commercial corridor. It's been an area that's been a big priority for the community vision, looked at since the downtown vision in 2022. There's already been some work there about how to visualize, how to make that safer, how to activate the downtown, and how to make it sort of, to use, I think, the downtown vision language, the sort of the trailhead for the rest of Freeport. So the goals there that are pretty well established have to do with adding experiences, improving pedestrian safety, which is critical, and then adding downtown amenities like public art, cultural offerings, music, new food opportunities, public outdoor seating, as well as wayfinding. You remember that Jay Paulus is doing some wayfinding work with signage for the town, and this is an area that could really be a key focal point for that shoots people off in different directions, as well as safe for all modes of transportation and convenient. So we're talking about pedestrian enhancements, but we also want to make sure that we're accommodating vehicle traffic and maintaining that throughput in the downtown. So that's a balancing act that we're lucky to have a good team behind us to work on. The current status, as we talked about, that image there came about from the downtown vision in 2022. So this is an idea that's been discussed for a while. This was also discussed most recently in June at the community meeting at the Performing Arts Center with Jeff Speck. That was built on some site walks by these engineering consultants who walked the corridor, analyzed the lane width, looked at the pedestrian crosswalks, and identified this opportunity, and then shared it the next day after the June 17th meeting with a working session with the committee chairs from most of the committees in town at the library. And there was a lot of support for this as a priority to, at the very least, test to understand, will it work? How does it play out? It's important to note as well that DOT looks at I-295 as the key mobility corridor. So in terms of commercial traffic that's moving through Freeport to a point beyond, DOT prioritizes 295 for that mode. because Main Street is so close. That gives us a good opportunity to do more placemaking on Main Street. And really important as well, last Tuesday, the Complete Streets Committee, whose purview is to look at these type of installations and the type of activities on the face of the earth, endorsed this trial project as worth pursuing. So good vetting there from the committee that we rely on to do that work. We have a great team. Stantec traffic engineers, they were selected through a pretty robust RFP with a lot of strong teams that applied. They've already done some preliminary work on this, and they've identified this project as feasible in terms of turning movements, traffic volume, what the impacts would be on queuing. They see this as a viable project, and that's important. Spec Dempsey, we had all enjoyed Mr. Speck's presentation a few weeks ago. You're going to see a sketch from him in just a minute, but they're working closely on this as well and making sure that the placemaking elements as well as the traffic are built into it. Maine DOT has also been engaged in this process. There's been some good input from their team already. And then, of course, we've had our public safety folks and Public Works looking at this from town operation and positive public safety for everybody. So good vetting on that. The vision, here it is. That's the long-term goal there from a sketch from Jeff Speck. So what we're talking about here is narrowing the intersection. We're talking about slowing traffic. We're talking about an all-way stop, meaning that instead of the Route 1 traffic moving through, there would be stop signs there on Bow and both sides of Main Street there, both sides of Route 1. And the idea there, the discussions that I've been a part of with the consultants, is that this intersection, because of the pedestrian traffic, because of the way the traffic flows, it essentially almost already functions as an all-way stop. And that testing this out and trialing it, the outcome is likely that you would add predictability for the motorists while making big moves to enhance pedestrian safety by shortening those crosswalks. So that's the vision, that's the idea. That would take some significant investment to implement this. And so the idea here is to try it. Let's try it out first before we make that commitment. And we'll need to try it to get DOT to support it as well. We all want to make sure that this works for all the stakeholders who would be impacted or who would benefit from it. So, let's see, what am I freezing up here? This is the high-level draft concept that Stantec put together, shared with the internal staff team, and then shared with Complete Streets Committee last Tuesday. And the idea, again, is to convert the intersection to an all-way stop, to eliminate the turning lanes, so to reclaim that public space for amenities. By eliminating the turning lanes, you're shortening the crosswalks. And again, Stantec, through their analysis, believes that this is feasible and that it wouldn't have a major impact on traffic compared to how folks move through the intersection today. And it creates a fair amount of public space as well. And I know Susanna from Meeting House Arts and other folks have ideas about how to activate that public space and how to add amenities and really turn it into a community spot that everybody's proud of and that encourages folks to gather downtown and spend more time downtown. So we've got a lot of folks thinking about this and how to help implement it. And we're here to discuss that with you tonight. If you were to endorse this idea tonight, there is subsequent work that has to happen to make it happen. We're in the engineering and design phase. We would want to continue to do stakeholder outreach, talk to the abutters, make sure everybody understands what this trial would mean, what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen permanently. It's not going to stay there forever. We want to learn from it. So gather that input. We need Maine DOT approval, right? So council endorsement tonight sort of gives us that runway to continue to push forward on this and to work towards DOT approval. Following that, communication to the community. Residents who may or may not be paying attention to the Complete Streets Committee or paying attention to this town council meeting. What we'd want to avoid is them encountering this as a surprise without any understanding about why we're doing it, why we're exploring it, why we're trialing it, what it means and what it doesn't mean. We have Pete Yazikevich, our communications director, has already put some thought into what that campaign would look like, how to reach folks where they're at, and how to help understand why we're doing it and what we're trying to accomplish it. Installation. We'll talk in a minute about a budget and what the commitment would be from Public Works, but we'll have to then go ahead and install this. That will take some time. There are existing paint on the street today that would have to be adjusted to clarify expectations for motorists and pedestrians. A fair amount of work would have to go into that. And then we want to learn from this trial. We want to understand what it means, what parts work, what parts don't, and then bake that into the Village Corridor Initiative recommendations moving forward so that we can partner with Maine DOT to implement the right solution for the town and hopefully go out and raise some dollars to do that. So the estimated budget, Stantec put together a budget on the equipment that would be needed, the jersey barriers, the posts, the barrels. We're lucky that Earl has some jersey barriers in hand. So if you look at the fine print on the budget that we shared earlier, that's about $15,000 just in gear. Because Earl has some equipment on hand, the new equipment, conservatively would be about $8,000. Again, part of the goal here would be to keep that cost as low as possible. So if you guys endorse this, we would go out and try to find partners who might have a couple of jersey barriers laying around or some posts or some stop signs that we could use to kind of push that budget down as low as possible. We all know that Public Works is busy. This is a busy time of year. We're talking about 4 days of work and an estimated time and materials budget of about $7,500. So the total budget to do this, once there was capacity within the work plan for Public Works, would be about $15,500. Again, conservatively, hopefully we could drive that down a little bit. And it would take about 4 days in that intersection to implement it in a way that's safe and predictable for everybody who's using it. So we also, if we're going to learn from this, there's some key data points that we really need to capture if we're talking about a permanent change. Again, significant capital, DOT sign off. Folks are going to want to make sure that this works before we really go big on it. We need peak season auto traffic. We need to see how folks navigate this intersection when there's a lot of folks in town. That rainy July Saturday when Freeport's swamped, we want to be able to see that. We want to make sure that the buses that are adjacent to this intersection continue to have that access. We have tour buses that park in front of L.O. Bean's flagship. It's also a Metro Breeze stop that we heard from Mr. Rickson tonight. So we want to make sure that that we accommodate that traffic. Adequate access for public safety vehicles. We want to make sure the fire trucks can get around the corner, that Earl and his team can plow the snow, that also we have positive economic outcomes in the village center for our business community. We want to make sure that this works for them and that they feel bought in from the beginning. And then also, as we talked about earlier, the potential to enhance cultural programming in our downtown, as we've talked about over the last several years. So next steps, if we choose to move forward tonight, is to continue to refine the plans with Stantec and Maine DOT, conduct that outreach to the abutters and key stakeholders, go to Maine DOT for the approval to actually do the installation, and then work with Public Works to make sure that they have the lead time to get the equipment and the lead time to plan their operations to actually do the work. And then work with Pete to get the word out to the community to make sure everybody understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the window of time is, what we're hoping to achieve, what we hope to learn from it, and how to move forward. And then at the end of the day, the goal is that we all come around to a good solution that works for the business community, works for residents, works for visitors, and we can go ahead and bake that into the recommendations from the Village Corridor Initiative.
Thank you. How long do you see this trial going for?
It depends. So if you saw the council motion tonight, there is an opportunity to do it potentially sooner, in the fall, after Labor Day. Because of snow removal, the implications of that would be a shorter window of time. Mm-hmm. If we were to wait until the spring of 2026, I think the ideal would be to go from mid-May through September, maybe even longer, to really be able to see it perform throughout the course of the season.
Yeah. And I see this in the be ordered as well, the fall 2025 or spring 2026. It seems logical to me that spring 2026 is probably the better option based on some of the work you still have to do and what you just mentioned with it would give us a little bit more of a timeline. Is there anything I'm missing about fall 2025?
No, I mean, I think you probably all share a desire to show some traction,
Yes.
to show some action, to show some, you know, some activity on the ground. So we have worked as fast as we could to bring this to a position to give you that opportunity on the sooner side. But we had a kind of a call to regroup with DOT and Stan Tech today, and I think everybody's of a like mind that it makes sense to do this right, to wait until the spring. Chance to do really thorough outreach, and to consider what the implications of this would be up and down the corridor, and maybe do some further planning around trials that could be informed by this. And I think it's important to note, too, that Stan Tech could adjust the scope and time of their project. What we didn't want to do, we've been pushing to get the Village Corridor Initiative done by the spring, April or so, with recommendations that allow us to move forward. And the concern was that if we waited until May of 2026, that scope of work ends before we get the chance to incorporate what we learned from this important trial. And so the conversation with Stan Tech today was, clearly it makes sense probably to do it in spring. Let's work together to adjust the scope so that we can finalize the report and the recommendations to bake these learnings into that. And they're fully supportive of that. Maine DOT is fully supportive of that. So
I almost think it could be sort of a, we've come to that time where the recommendations will be released, and then here's what we're doing.
Yep.
It could go hand in hand very well.
we can manage it. I think you're 100% right.
So the thing that Brett and I were talking about earlier today is that while Bowen, Maine has our attention, and we all know that people want to see something there, there are other intersections and other areas that we want to try things on. So this would also potentially give us the opportunity to roll out more than just this one test. Fail fast, fail cheap, or succeed fast and cheap.
Just to speak to the Complete Streets conversation about that, that was something that the committee certainly discussed. Part of the concern with doing it in the fall was the additional cost of painting over paint that Earl's team has just installed, and then because it has to be removed in the winter, we'd have to then put it back the way it was, and then potentially do it again in the spring if we really wanted to get that summer traction. There was other concern, which I think has been, Brett has brought up, the concern about the bus lanes in front of LL Bean and making sure that that's sufficient, particularly in the fall when we do get an increase in tour buses. I think there was also some concern about if it was going to roll out next summer with perhaps some additional intersections addressed for other trials, that there, is the risk of the yo-yo effect of we're going to do this, then we're going to take it away, then we're going to bring it back, and that sort of confusion. I will say that some members of the committee were more of the opinion of, we keep talking about doing these things, and let's do something that is actually visible and tested and get it out there. So both of those were reflected in the Complete Streets discussion.
So how long is the trial for? Is it going to go through the whole winter, or are we?
Well, that's what the question I asked. So, it's, if we did it in fall, it would be removed for snow removal, versus if we do it in spring, we'd have it until
Wouldn't we want to test it
September,
with the
October.
snow removal up? Because so we're talking about if we do this, we're taking it away every winter and putting it back.
No, it's not every winter. It's just that in the trial, because you'd be doing it with Jersey barriers, you can't plow against the Jersey barriers. You can plow against the curb. So in the long term, the idea is that this would be built out with new curbing, and the whole intersection would be designed permanently, and then that would not change seasonally. It would just be the trial that would have to change.
Great. Councilor Tomch.
So, a couple questions. During the trial, even though it's a few months only, can we still activate the public space during the trial, or would that be we do the trial and then we activate the public space in the permanent?
That was part of the discussion today. It's a great question, because DOT, to keep the cost down, offered one alternative, which would be to do posts. You know, what you don't want to do is make it look like a construction zone with Jersey barriers. And so how to mitigate that could be to do posts, but then you couldn't activate the space because you wouldn't have the safety behind those posts. And so I think we advocated to retain the option to use Jersey barriers, and that gives us the flexibility to really take advantage of that space. Personally, I think that that's going to be a key value for the community. It's a big reason for why we're doing that. And so to make sure that we can do that, we'll have to design it in the right way. And the consulting team understands that.
And if we do that, can we have Jersey barriers that are more than just Jersey barriers, like with planters on top or other stuff than just a block of concrete?
For sure.
That's, DOT's okay with that?
Yeah, as long as it meets their standards, we can do as much as we want to spend to beautify.
Got it. So timing, I'm frustrated because the sketch that we looked at said circa 2022, and this is not against you, it's more, I gave the same feedback to the project manager at Stantec. We knew this for 3 years, that this is what we wanted to try. So why weren't we able to do it this summer? And I know there's a lot that goes into it. You gave all the reasons. So it's frustrating to me that seems like it's falling off the table as an option, even though this is not a surprise to anybody. If we start in the spring, my concern, like you mentioned, some of the folks at Complete Streets said, is that we're pushing the end of the Stantec project back another 6 months, which means it's another year of talking about stuff. So again, our window, if we start in the fall, is somewhat compressed. What are we going to learn in just a month or two before we have to remove it? However, I wouldn't mind starting sooner rather than later. A lot of the outreach, I feel like that can be done in parallel. So it could be outreach of the sort, hey, you may have seen what we've done at Bowen, Maine. Here's some background behind it, as opposed to, here's what we're thinking about doing in a year or 6 months. What do you think? So anyway, I would advocate I'd advocate for summer 2025. You know, I know a lot of people are going to say it can't be done. I would, if there's a way of getting it done, I would still try and do that, if not fall. And then when we do the trial, I would strongly, I love that Suzanne is here and nodding eagerly and smiling and saying, hey, I can't wait to get my hands in this space. I think that's a key part of it, because I think if we just do the intersection and evaluate the traffic and say to people, hey, what do you think? We're going to get a lot of reactions all over the place. But if we tease the idea of, hey, what do you think? We also had these cool plants and this little mini stage, or whatever it is we have, people might see the vision and be like, oh, well, it was a little bit inconvenient for me driving through town, but I see why we're doing it. So I'd encourage as much of that as possible. Again, I know those are working counter to each other. Do it as soon as possible, but also plan these great things around it. So that's my wish anyway.
I appreciate that, and I understand it completely. And I think one thing to note, to bring this slide back up, is that the 2022 vision is awesome, but it's a baby step towards an all-way stop with eliminating turning lanes, which is a bigger move that would, frankly, this would be the highest volume intersection that DOT's ever tried this in. So we want to get it right to build that support. But I completely understand. That's why I kind of soft walked fall versus summer. I don't want to be the guy that's tapping the brakes. That's not what I'm here for.
Either way, I'm very excited about it. I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I love what's happening.
I get it.
One question I have as well is, the PPI is not an unlimited resource, right? It's finite. Does doing this take away from anything else in the project with them?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
There may be minor modifications, but
Okay.
I don't anticipate anything major that's not reasonable.
I'm very excited about the word trial. I think it's so powerful that a group of people called a town would submit themselves to the vagaries of a trial. I think you put your words to the chief learning, which is, so there'll be stop signs, I get, but single lanes at each intersection point. So the question becomes, and the fast learning will be, I think, can you meter that volume of traffic through 3 points? I guess I'm a little skeptical, but that's the excitement of a trial, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Cool. Sooner is better.
Yeah. It is a trial, and I think if we do it in May, we're in for the whole summer, right? Very hard to take away. If we do it in the fall, we have peaks, but it's not a constant flow of traffic. So we might be able to tweak it or learn something from that before we go and put the full-blown together again in the spring. So I would be for doing it in the fall. I know it's a little more work, but I think it'll give us time to think about what we want to do in the spring.
So-
Instead of, oh, we'll do it in the spring. Oh, wait a second, we should have done this, we should have done that.
Would we, kind of going back to what Counselor Smith was saying, would we do it in the fall and then put it back in the spring? Or it would just be we do it in the fall and that's that?
Well, and what is it about plowing against a Jersey barrier?
So I don't think it's the Jersey barrier that causes the issue. I've seen plows try that. I think, number one, you can do damage because it's not just a little curb. But I think the other issue is this comes with a lot of not just the Jersey barriers, but barrels and cones. So I just want to be really clear for everybody. Staff's job is to make whatever council wants happen. So does that mean that we'll shuffle some other things? The only thing that I would really rail against being shuffled are the safety things that have to happen, which Earl's got a lot on his plate. And his arms are really tightly folded right now, so we might want to hear from Earl a little bit. And then the beautification project, because we've got an extension on grant funding that I would want to honor that. But I think two things happen. If it goes up this fall, it's probably not going to look beautiful. And as long as everybody is okay with that, because when Councilor Pilch talked about could we have a Jersey barrier that doesn't look like a Jersey barrier, the answer is absolutely. It might cost a little bit more money, and I have been talking with staff all along about if we had time to properly source, I would be looking for some facade improvements there so it didn't look like a construction zone. So I think Earl is the king of whatever council wants will make happen, and I'm a little nervous with his body language right now, so I really think we should
He's not hiding behind the
hear
curtain.
from our very capable Public Works Director about whether or not this is possible for him at this point in time. And I am getting the evil eye now.
And one thing I want to add too is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this will have unforeseen barriers and challenges that we won't have time to react to if we do it in the fall. Like one thing goes off, you can't find 4 days, or something goes wrong with some sort of implementation, that's valuable time for the trial that we lose. So this is a very tight timeline.
I said sooner is better, but I may argue against myself with the following thought. Don't we need a high volume time of year to really make this a test?
Ideally, you would. I mean,
Yeah.
so there's a key audience and a key stakeholder here, and that's Maine DOT, who would have to support this infrastructure change. And I think understanding at that high volume time of year makes that a stronger case. That said, if there's a desire to do it in the fall now, and then to adapt if we learn and do it again in the spring, we can address that. But we do need to get DOT approval at this point. That's not solid yet. There's support, there's discussions, but to Councilor Benoit's point, there are some unknowns. Council approval gives us the runway to keep pushing on that. But this is a big, it could be perceived by DOT as a risk if it's done quickly. versus something that they are trying to do more and more in the state, and they want to build a reputation of credibility that these things work. So it's not to dissuade anybody, it's just to say that that's a key thing too, and if we want this to be something that we jointly go fundraise for, which is a key point of the PPI, then we want to make sure that we're doing it in a smart way that everybody can get along with.
I also think that when we initially put this order on here, we thought that we would go through the same process for approvals as we've gone through other things, which is a regional approval. And what we learned this afternoon is this actually has to go all the way up through the process with the state traffic engineer and Augusta sign off. So
Yeah.
I think that is, I think, part of what you're trying to communicate.
Exactly.
I also had a thought. Hopefully it stays with me. I lost it. It's gone.
I imagine that Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Christmas time are pretty busy times of year, but that also kind of gets into winter. So I'm going to ask directly Mr. Gibson, if we do it in the fall and we'll leave it up all winter, what would be the problem with doing that?
In the past, anything that's been placed in the right of way, like the parking that we have, has to be removed by October 15th. So for the Thanksgiving, all that stuff would have to be out of there by October 15th.
Why?
That's one of our town ordinances. The road has to be clear, and especially on the state road, they want everything moved out of the way so the snow can go. So if you left the Jersey barriers in place, let's just use the parklet. You left it in place and you plowed against it, you will have snow piled in the oncoming lane because there's nowhere for it to go. So when you put up a Jersey barrier, you're blocking where the snow can go to, which is the sidewalks and the curb line that we clean up.
So we have a Jersey, it's where does the snow go is the issue.
It's going to build up beside the Jersey barrier and start cutting the road down, which means it's going to increase the cleanup time for the public works to get that cleaned up. And then the other problem it develops is when you have the parklet and you have the inside and snow gets in it and it starts melting, somebody's got to clean it up. Because it can't stay there, it'll run across the road and freeze.
Well, that raises the question, though, in any new configuration, where does the snow go?
Well, right now you have a white line,
Right.
which you've got a little area, and so your white line and the edge of your curb. So when you take that off, when you're taking the Jersey barriers outside of that, now you're taking away that snow zone, I'll call it.
So in any permanent reconfiguration, the snow would go onto the sidewalk like it does now because you're just dealing with a few inches on a curb rather than a few feet on a Jersey barrier. I would perhaps suggest that it sounds like there is consensus about endorsing the trial, which is what I think you need, Brett, from the council. I think there's a lot of conversation about the timing, which may be moot depending on how long it takes to go through MDOT. So perhaps we go ahead and endorse the trial with a sense of urgency that we'd like to do it as soon as possible, and then maybe the timing comes back and says, okay, we got approval next month and we can do it, or it's like we're still waiting for Augusta. So
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable solution. We have one more council meeting in early August, which would lead a month into post-Labor Day anyway. So if you want, be happy to take the endorsement and then push on that and work with staff to make sure there's resources and capacity to do it, and work with DOT to get that approval. I do know that it's on everybody's radar. This trial is on everybody's radar. It's not a new concept. The right staff at DOT have already provided input, so there's a chance that we could push it along. No guarantees, but we could do our best with an endorsement.
I will say, I agree with what you said, but I'm still not convinced that even if everything does fall in place, I would prefer fall over spring. I think I would still lean more towards spring, so I would just ask that as you make progress on the timeline, that you come back to council and we still discuss what that would look like.
And I will, go ahead, Councilman.
And would DOT make their own recommendations? In other words, will they come back to us saying, well, you can do it in the fall, but really it would be better if you did it in the spring?
I think what we would hear, this is somewhat of a guess, but I think it's a pretty informed guess, is that if you want to make a permanent change, you're welcome to try it in the fall and learn from that. But we're going to want to understand on that rainy July Saturday how this performs before we endorse on US Route 1 and always stop.
Yeah.
So I think it would be sort of both and. And I will say, I think from having experience sort of playing in this type of sandbox with COVID, shutting down streets and, these type of things that are pretty compelling on the face of them, you typically get one chance with the public. And if you stumble, people are going to, that's that Bowen Maine thing again. We've played this game before. And that's not to tamp the brakes, it's not to slow anybody down, but that's reality. And I think that this idea has been talked about for a number of years. It's a compelling idea. Stantec and the engineers say it's feasible. So we'll as town manager said, we'll do as we're directed with enthusiasm. I'm excited about this and happy to do whatever is necessary. I just want to make sure that we're all moving forward together and we're setting ourselves up for success with something that could be transformative for decades, that we don't stumble over a couple of weeks.
Is there another decision that you need the council to make if we endorse it tonight? I know that you want to discuss it again, I'm not opposed to that, but do you need to come back for budget or use of town property or anything else that you know of that you'll need to come back to us for?
There's a budget item attached to this. We've got some sources identified. For example, there's $4 or $5 grand left in the Momentum Fund. I think we can find a relatively small amount of money to make this happen. So I'm not overly concerned about that.
So I don't think we need necessarily a budget. I think use of town property becomes kind of a little gray here. I think what we're looking for is even the way it's worded right now, where it says spring or fall, with the understanding that we'll come back before we do anything, that at least gives Brett what he needs to be able to move this forward. This is the first time that we've come to the full town council and said, this is what we want to do. So I think it was really important for us to make sure we had full approval.
I just want to make sure we don't slow it down. That's my only point.
So we can read this as, we support as is, because we're not deciding fall or spring, which then will lead to the understanding of that's a conversation to have once we know more about the approvals and timeline.
I'd be happy to come back if it's helpful to the council in August. And if conversations with DOT as a follow-up to the council endorsement say, we're not excited about doing the full project, but maybe we could try this or we could try that. We'll do our best to get the whole project approved on a timeline that everybody can execute and feel good about. If there's a half step that gets us some value and moves us in a direction and shows the traction that we all want to see, we can do that as well.
I just want to thank Brett and your team, because I think the fact that we're even talking about the possibility of doing a trial in the fall is because you really leapt into this after the kickoff with Stantec and said, really, how do we start moving things into implementation, things that we've been looking at renderings of from, in 2022. So I appreciate you and Stantec and everybody really leaping into this. The other thing I think that's exciting about moving from the downtown vision iteration of this to the Jeff Speck iteration is, one of the things in the downtown vision was this idea of the universal street of Main Street, of really having a way for more commingling of pedestrians and cyclists and things like that, which we knew was going to be a stretch for DOT. I think that this and the amount of public space it opens up for that sort of center of town that was really a focus of the downtown vision, is really, it seems to be coming together. And if we can get MDOT the buy-in and the approval on this, I think this is really a big step forward towards that plan that we've been working on for a long time.
Second.
And just while I'm thinking about it, I know that we've gotten input about the buses and the intersection. I do think that we have some key stakeholders that we need to go back to before we submit the actual proposal to DOT.
I agree.
So to kind of tie this back up, we'll read the be ordered as is and sort out the timeline as we go. So if you would like to go ahead, Councilor Smith.
Be it ordered that the town council supports efforts for a temporary traffic calming and pedestrian safety project at the intersection of Bow and Main Streets to be installed in fall 2025 after Labor Day or spring 2026.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson,
Yes, also thank you so much,
for not
Will.
yelling at me when I was suggesting that you keep it up all winter.
All right, and then moving on to item 95-25, this is to consider action relative to filling an interim term on the RSU 5 Board of Directors. This is sort of our policy that we voted into place in action. Appointments met and interviewed candidates, and this is our recommendation. So, Councilor Lawrence, please read the be ordered.
Okay. Be it ordered that Valerie Williams be appointed to fill a vacancy on the RSU 5 Board of Directors for a term to expire November 5, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So hi, good to see you. And then our final item for the night is item 96-25, which we added to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting for a liquor license for Sips and Suds, and I can't find it.
It's, yeah, it's separate. Chris is going to.
She was just talking to Valerie. So this again is just to consider action relative to setting a public hearing on August 5th, 2025 regarding a new liquor license application for Sips and Subs. Councilor Pilch, can you please read the be ordered? Oh, I see, then we all are like a different page.
Okay. Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for August 5th, 2025 in Town Council Chamber beginning at 6 p.m. to allow the public to provide comment regarding a new liquor license application for FOB LLC, DBA, Sip and Subs, 11 Mill Street, Freeport.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right. That's so funny. Some of them have the correct date and some of them don't.
Oh, no.
Yeah, anyway, we got there. Yes, August 5th. Moving on to public period comment number 2. So this is for folks who are not here, for items not on the agenda. And again, we just ask you limit it to 3 minutes and introduce yourself.
So I have a staff member and Jim from the radio station.
Hello, Jim.
Yep.
All right, moving on to other business. The only item we have there tonight is goals and agenda for the town council's parking working shop on Tuesday, July 29th.
So I asked, Caroline is getting ready to wander over to talk with you, but we knew that we wanted to talk about parking on the 29th, and staff took that and found a time and a date that worked for everybody, but now we need some help from council on what the goals are of that workshop so that we can be best set up to advertise it. For example, You had said you really wanted diverse groups from the community there. You wanted to make sure that we included, for example, L.L. Bean, who has significant amount of the private parking in the community. But we don't know if we're advertising something that you want a lot of people to talk, if it's for you to learn. Caroline has a wonderful presentation that's almost done to educate you about the history of parking and why we are where we are, and what that is, where we are. But I think we just wanted a few minutes of your time to make sure that we're setting you up for the meeting that you want to have.
I think what we're talking about is really important, so I'm glad to hear that your presentation will kind of talk about the status of what parking is in Freeport and how we got there. And I know I personally would love to see a lot of community engagement. I would love a lot of time for public comment. So those are my thoughts.
I don't know if I can ask questions, but
Please ask
to
questions.
cater our presentation to help the council have this discussion or look at parking, are there certain components to parking in Freeport that you're hoping to get the community to engage on or give you input on?
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. I don't want to be dismissive or condescending, but our shared parking model is a little bit unique. I feel like it's a strength we have, but it's a little bit hard to understand. So I assume that you're going to talk about that. And then really what I'd love to hear from the public and from the merchants and from everybody is, there's no such thing as free parking, right? We've heard that over and over again from all the people who've consulted for us. It's a matter of who pays for it, right? Does the town pay for it? Do merchants pay into the shared parking pool? Is it do consumers pay? So when we say we don't like this, it would be good for us to explore, well, if we don't do it this way, what does that mean? What's likely to happen if we allow this or don't allow that? So I know I'm being a little bit vague, but I think for the people who have been in having the parking discussion, like if we say like there's no paid parking, does that mean we're encouraging more of the shared use parking and charging more for that? Are we saying we don't want paid parking? We also don't care so much about shared use parking. We don't want any mandates. We want to let the market decide. So I just want to be realistic about what it is we're proposing, or what it is people are recommending.
I'd like to know what is the right amount of parking we need. I don't know that we'll ever get to that answer, but there is a certain level that we need when we're not full in town, and then there's a certain amount we need when we're full, and obviously when the parking lots are full, businesses are doing well.
Do you think it would be
So-
helpful to have Parking 101, a review, which some of you have kind of seen before? Do you think it would be helpful for this session to have Brett do a recap on the recent Walker parking study and what their thought is? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. He left the room, so he will be signed up for that task.
Because I think that number was in that study, and the method for calculating it, which I think there's some room for debate about, but that's all laid out pretty well in terms of how they got to that number.
I think that had like the lens of seeing redevelopment as multifamily housing or mixed use, but I think it will give us some more recent numbers in utilization to share.
I think the other piece that I think you can't talk about parking sourcing without talking about parking requirements. And that's definitely something that came up in the Jeff Speck presentation, was about the issues around parking requirements, and namely off-street parking requirements. And I think the other thing that he brought up that he was very much a proponent of, that is going to be part of the Village Corridor Initiative visioning, is on-street parking. What does it look like if we have a new emphasis with on-street parking? And I know we've had the experience where we've had plenty of on-street parking, but it wasn't striped, and suddenly we striped it and people started parking there. So I think, and that was part of the parking inventory, but I think just this, it's both the sourcing and the requirements.
Yeah, that's helpful to hear. We do have some data now. We actually don't have a lot of on-street parking, but we did get some data with the Walker report. The striping has been fascinating to watch, how it has really impacted human nature and parking. So that's all good information. So if we present this generally to the public, like what's parking in Freeport, what's one of the things that makes us so special about our parking and our setup, because it is unique, an update where we kind of stand with the Walker, anything else that would be beneficial or you feel that public should be educated on to give you feedback you're looking for?
Two things, I'll be less vague. Do you have stats on the shared parking capacity? How many spaces are being leased? How many are?
We do, but we have a lot of so we changed the parking requirements. So some people came in and chose to get parking recalculations because it lowered their requirement on paper. Some people didn't care because they had parking, so they just kept it. So we have a number, I would say we have hundreds of spaces on the face of the earth today not meeting a requirement. But people haven't put those, they've chosen not to put them in the shared parking pool. There's not really a demand there. So we have spaces that are being leased. We could share some of that information, but the number of spaces that are entered versus just sitting there, I feel like is really in the weeds for a public discussion on parking, and people are just choosing to do different things with them.
I'm thinking
I like weeds, but
I think it's like where we are, but then also like where do we go with it? I don't know how we facilitate that. I think about with the downtown vision process and the comprehensive plan process, there were scenarios that the public was given to give input on. I don't know if that's something we can do with parking.
yeah, I feel like we did that with the downtown vision, like leading up to the downtown vision. We lowered the parking requirement somewhat significantly in the space per square footage and the way we calculated
Right.
it to make that reduction in the hopes that we would see surface parking repurposed. Our downtown vision plan showed us what some of that could look like.
Yep.
And so I feel like we have the information. We didn't come up with anything different from the comp plan. But, back in 2018, 2019, when we lowered it, I think we all thought, oh, everyone's going to want to like put up housing now. And we just haven't seen that.
And I think that's something
So-
we can bring to the workshop on the 29th is those scenarios.
Some of the vision.
Some of the vision scenarios for parking and get people's thoughts on those. Yeah.
Just to kind of like reaffirm those. Is that what you're thinking?
I guess, yeah. I'm not, because I think parking was one piece of a conversation versus now it's the focus. So it might get different.
Okay, that's
Engagement.
helpful. We can incorporate some of the downtown vision work to build the three pieces, like Parking 101, the Walker report, and then what did we think we were going to do with all this?
Yeah. Yep.
And then if we talk about free versus paid, it'd be helpful to differentiate between municipal paid, or I'll say on-street paid versus off-street paid, because I think in the public's mind, they don't make as much of a distinction, but we might make more of a distinction.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of information about on-street paid. We are researching it. There was community discussion back in 2018, 2019. We had a task force. We did some survey work on this, so we decided that wasn't the right fit for Freeport at this time. So hopefully I'll have a little bit of more information on that to share.
And one last request, very, very high-level estimate, ballpark numbers about what it would cost to construct a parking garage. So many
modern
thousands
day.
of dollars per space or whatever.
I
Sure, it's
think
a lot, but-
if we go to Biddeford, we might actually, they are one of the newer constructed municipal parking garages that I'm aware of.
Westbrook, too.
Westbrook. So I think if we took those and just extrapolated the numbers, as long as you understand, we're trying to get you in the right
Yeah,
part of the country, not even a ballpark.
fair enough.
Okay.
But I just want to kind of reiterate something that Councilor Pilch said is not all paid parking is the same.
Right.
And I think that's an education moment as well. So making sure that people are aware of there's possibilities of what if we did pursue paid parking, what it could look like, not necessarily private or municipal, so.
Are there any ground rules we want to set, either legal or just policy-wise, around, because I know what people are going to want to come and talk about, like the thing that's on the ground now. Is that part of what we're going to discuss that night, or do we need to specifically exclude that, or is that whatever people want to talk about is fair game?
So it's a town council workshop. So far, everything that we're dealing with out in the public realm is public information. So the enforcement actions we're taking are all public. I think it really is up to you, which is part of what we're trying to figure out. Because one of the things I got clarity on in the last 3 minutes is, oh, so this isn't a workshop for council to talk amongst itself and come to some consensus. This really is the opportunity for council to put some information out there and get feedback that you can then take into inform future conversation.
That's my view. I feel like we're going to have plenty of opportunity to talk. I'd like to listen.
Yep.
And maybe we lead the conversation with towns changing. So let's talk about the change and not keep things the same.
So do you think it would be helpful? Hopefully I don't get in trouble for suggesting this, so I won't look at the end. But do you think it would be helpful if we asked the public at the meeting, talked about some different ways paid parking could work on street or on private property or public property, to get some feedback and see if we could do something? Maybe Sophie could learn how to use Menti and see if we could pull that off. Oh, she did? Oh, good. Because I think our community has really liked that tool. I think we can do it pretty cost effectively, and you could get some instant feedback. I'll nominate Kyle to help participate in coming up with, what some other towns are doing for paid parking, what some options are, and what it could look like. And you could get some feedback that way, and then I think you could also open it up for general comments on parking in Freeport. I think it brings out a lot of emotion. There's a lot of different scenarios and a lot of unique circumstances. I think you could get a wide variety, but trying to find ways to make sure you get some of the feedback you need to move forward on whatever decisions you have to make.
Yeah. And I think I want to make sure that we're not signaling intentionally or not that we're going to go towards paid parking. So I want to make sure we also have very clear conversations around what it would mean to keep it free as well as an option.
Yes, like how important is it to you that for the user, paid parking in Freeport remains free of charge?
Yep.
Getting some of that out.
So as we do this, would it make sense for us to maybe invite our top 3 largest private parking parcel owners to be prepared to say a little something about what their intentions are with their parking or what their desires would be? Or do you want them to just participate like everybody else?
Who would that be?
So I only know one. I know the top one. I'd have to do some research for the other ones, but Caroline is the parking expert, and I bet she could come up with that pretty quickly.
Well, I think we all know who the biggest is. It's not the town of Freeport, contrary to public belief sometimes. I can think of another private property. I can think of the top 2. I can't think of who the top third is because there's been some recent properties change hand. But we could do some outreach. I haven't heard from.
My gut reaction is they participate, but we don't ask them to present. I think it's.
Could I offer an
Unless they want to.
Well, that's what I was saying. I'd make an offer, like if you want to.
We're doing this.
Limiting everybody to 3 minutes, I would hate to say you only have 3 minutes. Like, you're welcome to give a talk, a little bit of an extended presentation if you want to.
Are you thinking we're inviting all downtown property owners or just
Top
parking
2 or
lot
3,
owners?
and public call anybody else who wants to. Please see Caroline ahead of time. But you can reach out to the top 2 or 3 if you know.
Okay, yep, I can reach out to the top couple and let them know. I'd love to hear from them if they want to participate.
You good with that? Okay.
Okay, sorry. Is that good? Is that everything you need?
If you think that's a presentation like that is going to give you everything that you need, then we're good, because that's really what we're here for, to make sure you get what you need from our community discussion on this.
One of the things I think I remember from the conversation was that most of the paid parking is where the premium spots are, like on Main Street. And the further away you get from Main Street, the less valuable the parking is. So it becomes more of a free-for-all. So, maybe it's not all over town. It's, if we decide to do that.
So as a path forward, I am wondering if it would make sense for Caroline and I to work on drafting an agenda, work with council leadership, and then when we're doing our, be next week, we could not even have to meet, we could do it via email. But when we get something that we think looks good as a draft, we'll send it out to the rest of the council for feedback back to us. And also the Peanut Gallery has weighed in, and Biddeford in 2021, their parking garage was $22 to $24 million, depending on how you looked at it.
I was chuckling.
And Westbrook's recent free parking, 400 space, was 21 million.
How many spaces in Biddeford? How many spaces in Biddeford?
You wait for just a minute, because I might just get the answer to that very quickly.
Any other thoughts for Caroline? Thank you. I think we're on the right track. I think it's a little like this, but I hope you have enough to kind of streamline it a bit. Feel free to reach out if you don't think you do.
I think we got some good feedback in a way that will lead to good public education and giving people a good base to comment, and then topping it off with a survey just to know people's thoughts on the importance of keeping shared, paid or not paid parking in Freeport.
Great. Thank you. And with that, we are at the end of our agenda.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
So,